You want an investment edge, but all you hear is noise, hype, and half-truths. Every signal is solid information, but only if you can see the bigger picture. This is where the Quasar magic happens. Weather, charts, news, all financial signals funneled into a single dashboard. Data alone isn't enough. Quasar Markets turns it into energy, sharp, clear, precise. Optimize with Quasar Markets today. Your edge when investing.
Good morning, Quasar Markets Live. How is everybody doing today? I hope you're having a great start to your Friday. Little bit of an uneven start here for us. The cues right now, as you can see here on my screen, looking to open down slightly here. SPY looking to open slightly to the upside. Advanced decline right now is positive about 1,200. So we do see 1,200 more stocks that are opening right now to the upside than the downside. Tick is slightly negative in import data. Has sort of been what's leading the day this morning. Came in a little bit hot. Retail sales, it was right in line, and the market didn't seem to care. It shrugged it right off. You know, for me, today is a little bit about Warren Buffett, and I got to give my man BigBeat all the props. He had talked about the fact that UNH could be one of the targets for Mr. Buffett and for Berkshire Hathaway. And he definitely nailed it. Berkshire Hathaway coming in pretty big with about a $1.5 billion stake into United Health. He's not the only one to really jump into it. We see Michael Burry, David Tepper, and Stephen Mandel and their hedge funds all announcing positions in UNH. We see it up almost 11% here. It's the biggest jump in over a decade. So definitely love to see that. You know, and if you're looking to think about companies that he's taken, you know, that he bought in the same type of thing, Wells Fargo comes to mind back in 2010, 2011. Let's go to a monthly here. And, you know, on these dips down here is where he got in. It did a pretty good run after that. So a lot of people eyeing UNH. Maybe, you know, they're out of the doghouse, so to speak, and moving back into, you know, the right direction. S&P is eyeing its 19th straight record high here. It's just insane what it's done lately. And if we look at it now, getting set to open at 646.28. That would be, again, the 19th record high of 2025. So I know our man BigBeat's been calling the top is in a little bit, or that he's just nervous about the market. Market doesn't care right now. Retail is still buying all of these dips. You know, you got to start to worry about some of these valuations at some point. You know, and again, all three indexes are up, are so far slated to finish the week up, even after those hotter than expected PPI numbers yesterday and that sell-off. 10-year, I was looking at here this morning, now down slightly. It had been up a little bit higher when I was looking here at about 4.3, so seeing a little bit of a retracement there. And if we look at, I will have Mr. Flanagan in later. The DXY here, 97.82. So again, yesterday it had a strong day, tried to make a recovery. Today, moving back to the downside. I did mention Mr. Buffett already. He did not only look or get into United Health, they also got into D.H. Horton. He also upped his position in Lennar. So we are seeing, you know, again, that he's seeing some value, whether it's him, whether it's Greg Abel, who is going to be his successor. Berkshire Hathaway is starting to allocate money. And we definitely saw it across both UNH, DHI, and it's got not just them moving up, but the others in their categories. CVS up about 2.28%. This morning, Molina Healthcare up 3.39%. Elevance up about 4.26%. So the Buffett, I joked about it, right? Is the Buffett effect still matter? Looks like it does. And you can see the different companies that he got into here that are all moving up. From macro, we got to take a step back and look. Yesterday, those hot PPI numbers have started to spark some debate. I didn't look at FedWatch this morning. Let me take a quick look at the numbers. But we do know just 2 days ago, before those PPI numbers came out, there was literally 100% expectation of a cut in September, and then also a second cut in October. And we now see that moving a little bit, not too much. We're at about 92% now of a cut in September, though a change has been in October, where there had been widely expected a second cut. That is now more almost 50-50 as to whether we see that second cut. I did see CNBC had Fed Goolsbee on, one of Steve Flanagan's, one of the guys I think does a good job too, talking about it this morning. So we'll keep an eye on there. Like I said, the odds have pulled back slightly, but it still seems that the cut is coming. I did see a report too from Goldman Sachs that was discussing the fact that, right now the VIX, and again, it's one that I point out in this show a lot. VIX is extremely low again, down towards that 14 right now, 1457, but to the lower side. And what that means is that the explosion, or where there is a lot of downside risk. They said that, when the VIX is this low, you tend to see a spike. It's why I am recommending covered calls or calls, long dated calls into the VIX. When it's at these levels, buy protection now when you don't need it before you do. But this does talk about the fact, or said that it has definitely an elevated pullback risk on the sort of setup that we're seeing across the VIX with us setting up stuff. You could also, and Goldman Sachs suggested there are some cheap put spreads that you could look at for hedging also on the equal weight S&P. So they did have a couple of ways that you could play it there. NVIDIA in the news, like they are almost every day, down slightly here at about 181.85 after some news came out that China's not maybe going to take all those H2O chips. We know the U.S. cleared NVIDIA to sell H2O AI chips to China, but Beijing is pushing back. They have urged their tech giants, which are Alibaba, Tencent, ByteDance, and more, to halt purchases pending national security review. They have concerns over potential backdoors and tracking tech. So sort of, the reversal of what we usually see, where here in the U.S., we tend to doubt Chinese technology or think that they maybe are. Hey, Zora, how are you doing? Hope you're having a good morning there. That maybe they are surveilling us. It was a big thing with Huawei and others. They're now using it against us. China wants AI self-sufficiency is the takeaway that I have here. They are definitely pushing Huawei's GPU development. The U.S. plan to keep China reliant on our American-made chips, of course. It could create openings for their Chinese industry. And delays to any HTO shipments, of course, would dent NVIDIA's China revenue short term. We'll see. Does this open the door for them to get into the world of Blackwell chips. We've seen the president was willing to move and give, the approval for the HTO for 15% of the profits. And the same thing with AMD. Will that door change here again based upon that, that pushback? We are seeing a little bit of a pullback here, still continuing here this morning. So after all the data sort of getting digested, we are seeing a little bit of a pullback across both crypto and the stock market here so far. I even pulling back a little bit also. What is moving up today is gold at 33.41. We do see silver has pulled back below that 38 level here, and a pretty significant pullback here over the last several hours. Quite honestly, since Wednesday night when it got up to 38.70, we've seen a pretty big move back across silver. As we look at the S&P 500, it's a mixed bag right now. We do see XLE, which is the energy sector, set to open it in the red. XLK, which is technology, set to open it in the red. But healthcare, financial sector, real estate sector, all in the green. A lot of that thanks again to Mr. Buffett. Some of the other big news today on a macro level we got to keep in mind when looking at the markets today. Keep keys up here. Is that the president and Vladimir Putin are getting ready to have their talks today. In Alaska, I saw they took off already. Trump wants to halt the Ukraine war, and Putin may seek to keep Crimea and Donbass and block the Ukraine NATO bid. So we'll see what we get out of this. Ukraine EU warning that territorial concessions risk emboldening future Russian aggression. From an economic angle, Russia's growth is definitely slowing. Their inflation is continuing to skyrocket. And, the fiscal deficit widening from the lower oil and gas revenues are definitely bringing them to the table. Market implications, European construction stocks were up 20% year to date. Rebuilding the Ukraine could take a long time and could cost somewhere in the vicinity of $500 billion from what I'm seeing on estimates. So, an end to that war would definitely get those type of industries moving to the upside. And energy and defense stocks could swing sharply depending on the outcome of these talks. Things that are we definitely want to keep, on the top of our minds, so to speak. Let's take a look at some of the pre-market movers here so far today. Let's start on the upside. I got to move my notes here. I know we're starting with Open Door. Where is it? Here we go. Open Door now up about 14% here in the pre-market, up 25% yesterday. Analysts, August surge from the meme stock mania, but now we're seeing some high-profile investor backing. Anthony Pompliano disclosed a large position. Eric Jackson pushing for a board seat, maybe looking to try to take over as CEO, has this market, this thing moving without a doubt. They are shifting to an agent-led model. And again, those that don't know, Open Door is real estate listings, so to speak. And they are launching their Key Agent iOS app and their Cash Flush hybrid product. Stocks up 51% year to date. But definitely one of the pre-market pumpers. We spoke a little bit about UNH, as I said, now up about 11.48%. We know it had really gotten beaten down over the last several months. This is a stock that, has a 52-week high of 630, trading down, 60% from that level. Like I said, the stock halved over the past 12 months on rising costs, the Department of Justice Medicare probe, and some potential PBM scrutiny on their, the systems they have in place and their sort of monopoly of all the different sides of it. But the company projects earnings growth return in 2026. Didn't give great forward guidance, but Buffett buying at a 15x forward earnings is sort of his classic value entry point. Something we talked about here on the show for the last few months, right? Is look for those stocks that have a good price to earnings ratio, good value earnings. That's what Mr. Buffett would be looking for. And if you are looking for maybe some sympathy plays there, Elevance, as I mentioned, up about 4.41%. Molina Healthcare up 3.39%. And CVS up about 2.2%. Also, another one high up here is another Buffett buy, Nucor, NUE. They're entering into steel, and we talked about this. This is one of the companies actually that we spoke about, and especially one of the sectors that we spoke about, BigBeat and I, as a possible purchase by Mr. Buffett. Again, this is the leading steel producer. It's been one of the S&P's dividend darlings. Their last dividend was 55 cents a share, and they have increased their dividends each of the last 25 years. And steel prices, we know, have been boosted by the tariffs. And we see an $830 a ton price right now, basically for the commodity, and that's definitely helping them. We spoke about what is Mr. Buffett like value. It's trading right now at about 13x earnings to EPS. So again, well below what the S&P is at a 22 times the earnings ratio right now. So another commodity play by Mr. Buffett. Sprinkling one on the downside here, AMAT, Applied Materials, has had a rough go of it today, down about 14%. They've actually bounced back slightly here, seem to be sort of finding a floor. They did have a Q3 beat, but quarter four revenue guides to the downside, and a missed revenue consensus has them under pressure. They talked specifically about their China exposure. 35% of their sales come from China, and there are definite headwinds from the tariff and export restrictions there. And again, a little bit of the sympathy plays that are getting affected by this too. I have here on mine laggards, KLAC, similar setup and moving to the downside. Lam Research, LRCX, also down on that news. And JP Morgan did come out on a sector update and said they see slowdown as timing related, but not structural. So could be a buy the dip opportunity for some of those that we see right there. Intel, INTC, come down a little bit, had been up as high. Well, it's up almost 11% the last 2 days. The CEO was asked to come to the White House. He did. And now we see reports out of Bloomberg that the U.S. government is in talks to take a stake in Intel to support domestic chip manufacturing, the Ohio build-out. We'll see what comes from that. I mean, seems like a lot of partnerships into the chip industry for the government. From a national security standpoint, I do see some of it, but we're supposed to be an open and free market. And some of the things that we used to rail about in Europe, where they supported companies like France, supported things like Airbus tremendously, or other state-supported entities were sort of frowned upon. It's amazing how we are now moving in that direction also. So it does have Intel up, like I said, close to 12% in 2 days, though. So, you're not going to complain if you are in there. Nucor, definitely a neobank. I've talked about this. Nucor is one of the companies that Warren Buffett was invested in. that has direct relations to crypto, even though him and Mr. Munger would rail about it. NU in Latin America, one of the larger exchanges or places where crypto is traded. But a nice move up here today, up about 11.16%. As they said, their earnings were well above expectations and they had very strong Latin America growth. So we are seeing that. Let's take a look what we've got. Tick is still slightly negative. Advanced decline is still moving to the upside. So again, this morning, we're hitting sort of, this is the high of the morning, I believe, on the advanced decline at 1338. So, definitely a positive there. Just want to take a quick look through some of the stuff here. Bitcoin back at 118.5, so moving to the downside still. So we're seeing the U.S. or Western Hemisphere selling off crypto for the second day here. Ethereum, the same thing, coming down, back down to the middle of the range. So definitely seeing some profit taking across crypto here this morning. That leads me to believe we could see the same thing across the Qs here on the open. So keep your eye out. Could see a little bit of headwinds here, a little bit of profit taking this morning. News, trying to look around, don't see anything really breaking that's hitting anything right now. Again, Mag 7 mostly slated to open to the upside here. Nvidia slightly down on that, China news. And now Microsoft, well, they're moving back and forth. Everything else at this point to the upside so far. Trying to see if there's any big moves, any big changes to what had been up or down today. Not really any huge moves there. CoreWeave was one we have to talk about today. Definitely getting hit here, down almost 20% in the last 2 days, even below the lows that we had seen last week. And they are under pressure for a few reasons, but money issues being the main one. This has been a post-earnings drop. Their IPO lockup has expired, so we're seeing a lot of insider selling too that we have to mention. Again, this was a fairly recent IPO launched in March. Was a little bit of a darling, pulled back, and then was seeing strong growth with the increase in the prices of crypto, but definitely getting hit here. Again, their financial strain is their 20 to 23 billion 2025 CapEx, which is about 500% of current revenue, and they added about 10 billion more in debt expected this year. Their interest expense already exceeds their operating income, and their debt sustainability is in question. It isn't just affecting them, it also has CORZ down today, which is a data center crypto mining company that was being bought out. That buyout is very, very, very much in question with this debt issue. So something that we definitely have to keep in mind. Watching QFin also this morning, down about 5% this morning, almost 10% in the last 2 days. Again, and I would point out, we are seeing Chinese stocks in broader market, the tech sector getting hit here, QFin down. There is some regulatory risk, obviously, here. That is why it's down today. And then Target, man, I told you my family is a Target family. The wife and little one love it, but it's struggling. Every time it tries to make a move to the upside, it just seems to get bad news, so to speak. And they are ending their Ulta Beauty partnership. And their beauty category is 10% of sales turned negative in Q1 as Walmart has pushed their beauty expansion with L'Oreal. So definitely viewed as negative for traffic and revenue growth. Another challenge for their incoming CEO. So Target under trouble also. Let's see what else I had to cover here today. Did see that Bridgewater is exiting the Chinese market. They have sold about $1.5 billion in Chinese equities, as Ray Dalio, the founder and former CEO of Bridgewater, is getting ready to step aside. So big change there. Some other news I saw from sort of the titans of industry, the biggest sort of names out there. Howard Marks says the Mag 7 is not overvalued at all. And he actually said that everything in the S&P that isn't named the Mag 7 is what's overvalued. He said that he's not worried about a 33 forward guidance, so to speak, or 33x when it comes to price to earnings on the Mag 7, but he's more concerned on the others that are running right now at a 22. So I did think that was a little bit interesting to see. I was reading a lot on the airlines too. It does look like we are seeing, airlines are cutting their capacity quicker as students are going back to school here already fairly quickly. I know here in the Ohio area, they are, some schools have already started. We are open, by the way. So we are open. Let's see what we get out of the queues here. First move, like I said, first move was a sell off here. We'll see if that continues, or is it just a quick blip across the screen here. Again, that first move is usually the algorithms and the market on open orders that move the market one way or the other. Let's see what we get. 579 is where we need to regain here to start moving. And we do see the Dow does open up almost up a 0.5 percentage point here, but already moving back to the downside. Here, 45,100. We're trying to stay above. We were at 45,203 on the open, but again, a little bit of profit taking coming on some of these key names. Let's take a look at them. Definitely some key selling on open door here. Now only up 9%. After being up 20 some odd percent, as you can see, hitting a high of 364 in the pre-market trading, now down at 330. So that's getting hit right now. Same thing, UNH, some people that woke up and said, thank you, Mr. Buffett, taking a little bit of a profit here. Not too surprising. I do see support at 93.50 here for any of you scalpers. 93.50 could be a nice little entry there. And again, a lot of these Warren Buffett names getting some profit taking, as I'm sure some of the stockholders are saying, woke up and said, hey, wasn't expecting that jump. Let's take a little bit of profit here. Tick is slightly positive. Advanced decline up about 2,000. But that is down from the morning high, which was right around 2,300. It looks like 2,700, excuse me, was the high of the morning. So we are seeing a little bit of take the profit. Tick is fairly flat overall. Q's the one getting hit. It is trying to bounce back from the lows of the day. Lows of the day now 578.38. If we can break back above 580 here, then you start to think about a rally. But got to break through that 580. Dow Jones still seeing some profit taking here. Again, lows of the cash market right now, 45,061. Bitcoin again also falling to the lows of this morning, trying to bounce back, lows of 118, 137. Same thing, Ethereum trying to hold above 4,600 here. I would say that's the important line to stay above. I will point out on the crypto markets, though, we've had a lot of leverage get pulled out of the markets on the flush up and down the last 24 hours. So as open interest picks back up, liquidations become more of an issue. This is more spot selling moving the markets. That's what we're watching so far. See, let's take a look and see what is pumping this morning. Liberty Global moving up here. I'm not sure what they do. Liberty Global Telecommunications up about 12.53% here. So nice little move here by LBTYB, Liberty Global. D-Local, nice move to the upside here. D-Local with a nice move up 5.93% here. Trying to do a little bit of a breakout and break 1640 here. Watch for a run. Yeah, break is 1640 here. Could see it does look like it's halted here. It looks like it's halted. Nice move to the upside by DLO. Oh, there it goes. It's back open. 1625. Break 1640. Watch for a run. It's got room all the way up to 1744. So you've got room there to move. Coinbase continuing to get hit here. You can see I like it down at that 308, 305 area. If it falls down to that spot, definitely getting hit this morning pretty hard again, Coinbase. Carvana, another one that's really slid down since its earnings report, has filled the gap to the downside here. So Carvana getting hit again could get interested in that 330 area as a good spot for it. Tick still negative, advanced decline, moving to the downside. Starting to see a little bit on the short-term chart here, maybe of the Dow Jones, finding its bottom and trying to work its way off the lows of the day that were just above 45,000. Let's see if the Qs are starting to recover. So same thing here, seeing a little bit of recovery here out of the Qs. So again, most of this algo trading or market on open orders. So don't get yourself shaken out one way or the other here. Crypto, on the other hand, though, continuing to sort of drop to the downside. I would say here, you've got downside till about 45.33 and even 4,500 here on any further drop. Anything below that 4,600 here could trigger you to the downside. Tried once to make a sweep down there. But Ethereum looking a little bit weak here. WTI back down at 62. So again, it is finding a little bit of a bottoming here, but oil is getting cheap again. Tick still negative. Advanced decline has bottomed out and started to move back up also here. So we are starting to see that. Ethereum lost that 4,600 handle, so watch out. Now you could start to see some liquidations kick in here on that. Bitcoin 18,250, same thing. You start to break below that 118 level, you do start to open yourself out to liquidation. Definitely seeing a sell-off across crypto here. So I just got to check a few things on my own accounts here. Okay. Now, Ethereum got down below 4,500 yesterday. Wouldn't be too surprising to see it do that again here. So that's what we're keeping an eye on. This drop leads you to believe it's going to go back down to that 4,500. I do love it bouncing off of that 4,500 as a play. You can see neither of them are bouncing yet. So crypto definitely still under pressure here. And again, Q's had bounced, but now back towards that lows. So we are not seeing that buy the dip yet here across any of the markets. Tick still negative now, negative about 200. It's mostly been staying negative. It's tried to go positive on a couple of occasions, but so far unable. We're still seeing sell pressure, so you can see the SPY. Q's just hit another low of the day, so we are definitely under a little bit of pressure here. Just seeing if any other news coming across that really matters. Not really. You see industrial production actually came in pretty good here. So that is a little bit positive. Okay, tick has gone a little bit positive here. Let's see if it turns it around. Dow Jones picking back up. So it is those Dow. I have to look. It's going to be. What I want to do is look at this. UNH now up 12% again. So that's where the buy-in is. That's why the Dow moving to the upside. Centene, a nice move to the upside too. Again, managed healthcare up about 4.68% so far. Intel seen a little bit of a sell-off like we talked about. WeRide is up today after announcement that Grab has invested in them, Grab being the Instacart of Europe. Seeing lows of the day on Ethereum here. 45.40, like I said, it looks like your downside to 4,500 is pretty swift here. Bitcoin holding above 118 here, back at 118, 107. Ethereum holding on by a thread at that 45.75 area. Qs, you can see same thing, trying to bounce off the lows of the day at 478 here, 478.41. See, the US 30-year yield is 109 basis points higher than the 5-year, the widest gap we've ever seen since 2021, since COVID. So, the treasuries are definitely not pointing in the right direction. Tick negative still 220, advanced decline down to about 1,000 here. DXY is holding up at that 97.85 area. Like I said, Dow Jones holding up better than the SPY or Qs. SPY is still slightly positive, but not by very much here, down about 4 basis points. Qs are down 25 basis points, have hit a low in 578 and bounced from that level. Bitcoin and Ethereum under pressure here. Ethereum down to 45.65. Like I said, I'm looking maybe, what happened at 45.50 is going to tell you a lot here. Does it swoop all the way down to that 4,500 level? NVIDIA now down 1% here this morning after the Chinese are pushing back on the H2O chip. See if we can get back above 180 here today. Tesla getting hit a little bit this morning, down about a half a basis point or half a percentage point here. Still falling to the downside. Advanced decline now down to 800, under 800. Looks like it wants to happen. $45.62. And we do see the SPY has now gone negative here, so we are moving to the downside. I do see it's time to talk about currencies with our main man, Mr. Flanagan. Let's bring him in here. Steve, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. Good morning and happy Friday. Looks like one of those days. The data is the driver. And, right now, you can make a case on either side. I saw my man, Mr. Goolsby, just recently speak, and suddenly, rates are not going to be here forever. A little crack in the ice. So,
yeah,
Jackson Hole next week. Today's a day of paralysis, waiting for this Trump meeting with Putin. So this is going to be one of those days where don't expect very much. I do think that the recent run-up, you'll probably see quite a bit of hedging. So that could be a downside play across the financial markets. But overall, not a good day to be really diving in deep on positioning, because Monday could be a whole different world.
Yeah. We got to start with the president on his way to Alaska to talk with Mr. Putin. That could be the first of those, huge moves, right?
That's right. Certainly a peace deal, we're not going to get a peace deal, but we could get a framework in which is presented to the Ukraine and to Europe. And then the follow-up meeting, hopefully everybody gathers around the table. And this, loss of life stops. So that's a geopolitical positive, another peace deal. Now we just need to kind of get through the data and see just exactly. I mean, everybody, when I talk about data driven, nobody's talked about PPI the last number of months being benign, like the way they're talking about this one, what could be a one-off number. Goolsby even said it's, we can't react to one-off numbers. So definitely there's, price increases and, definitely this tariff thing. But the tariff thing is a one-off. It's going to be a one and done, and then the numbers return. So I don't want to really hang my hat on this one. Definitely put the gear in neutral, and it's a wait and see now to see what exactly happens. Big events on the horizon, though, today.
Absolutely. Well, let's get into some of the charts here with you. I've got the DXY up here at 97.77 right now, it looks like.
Yeah, that's the dollar negative view is so well entrenched that, if you closed your eyes, you're hitting the bid and selling dollars for a variety of reasons. Numbers today in the U.S., okay, but slightly to the downside, perhaps. Numbers across the world, unemployment in Australia, 4.2 was an improvement from 4.3. UK GDP, 0.4, plus 0.4 from a minus 0.1. The only area of concern still remains the Eurozone, where preliminary GDP was just plus 0.1. So the patient is alive, but it's very difficult to really see anything going. In China, numbers were poor. While July industrial production was up 5.7, that's coming down from 6.8%. And retail sales were up 3.7, but that's down from 4.8%. Japan was a bright spot. Numbers were very good, which is reinforcing the rate rise in Japan at their next meeting. So when we look at the Dixie, everybody's saying recession is on the, because of tariffs. And, there's just a lack of confidence out looking in, especially as we talked about when you saw the Canadian Pension Fund teachers having moved so much out of the dollar. And that's probably echoed around the world, which means once everybody's out, then you got to watch for, I need to get a little bit back in. So, yeah, the Dixie, big support. Last week's close was 98.27 above us. So definitely reinforcing this negative trend. But Wednesday's low was 97.63. And yesterday's low was 97.63. So I'd be real careful pounding it right here. If you don't get below 97.60, you got a daily double bottom in place.
Okay. I love it.
Yep. But,
You're not afraid to put that, that's buy that dip, baby, especially if it's double dips, right? You like the double dip cone?
That's exactly it. I look for levels where, look, I can suddenly buy a dip here. I can be bearish, but I'm simply saying ahead of this double bottom low on a daily, I'm going to respect that. If it goes down again today and say hits 97.65 and then closes up around 97.80, well, you have such definitive levels in which to trade on. You can be a contrarian and say, I'll be long here, but if it breaks 20 points lower and breaks that double bottom low, I'm out. And I'll go back into
you have it set right. What you're saying, what I love is you have it, you have your sort of invalidation point pretty close. It's a tight stop loss.
That's exactly right. So we move around the currencies, the euro dollar closing higher on the week, the euro getting a real bounce on a potential, path to peace in the Ukraine. And that would be a good thing. But their economic growth, if we're going to stay on our data is the daily driver theme, then in the Eurozone, once the euphoria of a path to peace wears off, which, show me the money, the data that is not supporting it. Around sterling, sterling looking good, 135.67 off of last week's close of 134.48. But sterling has a very interesting chart as well. And this is, my job when I talk currencies is to point out to the viewers that, hey, things may be along the narrative that we keep hearing, but be aware, there are some things. Sterling has a head and shoulder on the dailies,
Right.
An inverted head and shoulder with a neckline coming in at 135.20. What does that mean? In the technicals, when you begin to look at things like that, you break 135.20, which is around about today's low. That takes out a neckline. It suddenly brings in a surge of technical analysis selling. So another definitive level in which to hold here. We're short dollars, right? That's what the market position is. But these are levels to keep in mind as early signals of a potential break.
Right.
That's when I look around, the yen is clearly favoring now. The market is now moving very quickly into a consensus of a yen rate rise, interest rate from its present 0.5%. And we know our Secretary of Treasury was kind of pushing and urging that. Japan, the Bank of Japan, saying his view is that they're behind the curve and they need to raise rates. Now, interesting, if Steve was here, the last time a Treasury Secretary made those type of comments was during Steve's tenure in the government. And the yen reacted very strong. Yen strength, dollar weakness. That's an interesting one to watch. It kind of runs against the grain of my feeling. However, I'm not going to, I have that one firmly in mind in history when Bob Rubin made those comments about urging a stronger yen. Now, that wasn't the necessary quote from this time around, but when you start to look in and dabble into the Japanese internal politics, that's an interesting nudge from the U.S. So, and then the one I always talk about in currencies is a dollar mex, 8% currency. It's a magnet for where people park money, and that is beginning to show it's around 1869.50, showing some MEX strength, dollar weakness, again, as money quickly moves into the parking lot. That's what we call that MEX, because you can just leave it there and get 8%. And if you're short the dollar, then you have an 8%, 4%, 4.5%. So you're earning. But if you have long MEX short yen, you've got a 7.5% turn now. So there's a lot of reason to watch that MEX very carefully. Today is a nothing burger. Don't do anything. No matter what happens today, the picture is going to be much clearer after this Russia-U.S. meeting, and then Jackson Hole, where Jay Powell will be speaking, and very often the Fed Reserve chairmans make some large comments as a trial balloon. I think this is where Greenspan made his rational exuberance speech.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things on the horizon that could change rapidly. This is not a time to be going in, all into positioning right now. Right now, this is a time to be a bit defensive and use very smart risk management and begin to look for hedging trades.
Absolutely. I've been talking about the VIX this morning as one of them. It's down very low. Again, the VIX doesn't care if things jump up or down. It's a play against volatility, right?
That's right. Yep.
Awesome. Well, Mr. Flanagan, anything else we need to know before we break for the weekend?
Well, let's have a great weekend. Recharge your batteries and, focus on probably the new news that comes out. and there'll be plenty of opportunities ahead to position and trade.
Absolutely. I agree with you very much. For Mr. Flanagan and for Quasar Markets, everybody have a fantastic weekend. We'll see you on Monday morning.